Welcome to English Audio Club. Today we learn English through a story. So, let's start it. My name is Freja. I'm 30 years old and live in a quiet neighborhood in Aarhus at Denmark. My life looks good from the outside. I'm married. I have a nice apartment and a stable job. But inside, I feel empty. I married Mikkel a year ago. He's kind, patient, and always hopeful. He brings me flowers every Friday and leaves sweet notes in my lunchbox. Every morning, he kisses my forehead. He does everything he can to make me feel loved. But I don't love him. I married him to forget someone else, Noah. Noah broke my heart, and I thought Mikkel could help me heal. But I was wrong. Each day, I wake up and pretend. I smile when I feel like crying. I say thank you when I feel nothing at all. I try to act like a proper wife, but deep down, I feel like a stranger in my own life. One night on our balcony, Mikkel said, "I know you don't love me yet, but I believe you will." I said nothing, because I already knew the truth, I never would. Our apartment looks perfect, clean, full of light, with soft furniture, neatly arranged books, and candles on the table. People say it feels warm. To me, it feels like a stage. Every morning, Mikkel wakes up before me, makes coffee, and leaving a cup on the kitchen table. Sometimes he leaves a little note that says, "Have a beautiful day, my sunshine." I read it, I smile, then I sit there in silence. Every day, I get dressed, put on makeup, and go to my job at the bookstore. I help customers, arrange books, and laugh when people tell jokes. But inside, I feel tired. Tired of pretending. At night, Mikkel talks about his day. He shares stories and asks me about mine. I say things like, "It was fine," or "a bit busy." I'm not lying, but I'm not telling the truth either. Sometimes, when he looks at me, I see something in his eyes, doubt, maybe fear. Perhaps he senses it too, but he never says anything. We eat dinner together most nights. He lights candles and plays soft music. He tries so hard to make everything feel calm and beautiful. That only makes it worse, because he deserves someone who make him smile, and I'm not that person. Sometimes, after he goes to bed, I sit alone on the couch. I look around. Everything is perfect, but it doesn't feel like home. It feels like a beautiful box that I can't breathe in. I smile a lot, at work, in cafes, and on the street. People think I'm happy. When they see Mikkel and me together, they say, "You look great together." I nod, I thank them, and I keep smiling. But behind every smile is a small lie. And I tell that lie so often, I almost believe it myself. When Mikkel hugs me in public, I hold my breath and smile, but inside I feel like I'm watching someone else's life. Like I'm playing a role. And I'm exhausted from acting. At the bookstore, my co-workers laugh and share stories. I join in. I talk about recipes and weekend plans. But in my head, one question repeats, "What are you doing with your life?" Sometimes I go to the restroom just to be alone. I sit with my eyes closed, surrounded by quiet. No sounds. No eyes on me. Just silence, and the truth. I don't hate my life, but I don't love it either. I feel like I'm drifting, like my days just repeat themselves without meaning. One evening, Mikkel picked me up from work. He opened the car door, smiled, and said, "I missed you today." I smiled back, but I hadn't missed him, and that made me feel terrible. That night in bed, he fell asleep quickly while I stared at the ceiling and whispered, "I'm sorry." He didn't hear me, but I needed to say it because every day I smile on the outside, but feel like crying inside. It was Friday. Mikkel always plans something special. That evening, I came home to candles, soft music, and the smell of fresh basil. He had cooked my favorite, chicken pasta with garlic bread, and even wore the blue shirt I once said I liked. He smiled like he had been waiting all day just to see me. He pulled out my chair, poured the wine, and toasted to us. I raised my glass and echoed, "To us," but I didn't feel a thing. The food tasted good, and the music was gentle. Mikkel told a funny story from work. He laughed, I smiled. But inside I felt cold, not angry, not sad, just empty. Watching him talk so passionately, so full of life, and made me feel like I was disappearing next to him. After dinner, he took my hand and said, "Let's go for a walk." We strolled to the park near our apartment, to the old oak tree where he had proposed 1 year ago. He looked at me with such hope and said, "Remember this place? I told you I'd love you forever." I wanted to shout, "Mikkel, I don't love you." I never did. But I stayed silent. I looked at him, then at the tree, and said nothing because I didn't want to crush his joy, even if it shattered my own peace. I remembered that night, the fairy lights, the tiny ring box in his shaking hands, the way he looked at me like I was his whole world. He said, "Freja, you make me believe in forever." And I said yes, not because I believed it, but because I desperately wanted to feel something. Now, standing there a year later, everything felt changed. The lights were gone. The magic had vanished. Only the tree remained. Mikkel took my hand and said, "I still believe in us. I know it's been difficult, but I believe in you." I saw how much he meant it, and that made it harder, because I didn't feel the same. Not even close. I looked at the ground, then toward the street. I imagined walking away right then, just leaving. But I didn't. I stayed, not because I believed things would get better, but because I couldn't bear to break his heart, and because I had no idea where I would go. Because sometimes guilt is heavier than truth. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the floor beside the bed, not crying, just feeling heavy inside. And for the first time, a clear thought came, I need to leave. I'm not meant for this kind of love. It was a quiet Sunday. Mikkel made pancakes for breakfast. He smiled across the table and said, "Freja, can I ask you something?" I nodded. He looked serious but gentle. Then he asked, "Do you want to have a baby?" I froze. My fork stopped mid-air. I looked down at my plate. I couldn't meet his eyes. A baby, with a man I didn't love. How could I bring life into the world when I felt so empty inside? My hands turned cold. I tried to speak, but no words came out. Finally, I whispered, "I'm not ready." He didn't argue. He just nodded slowly, but I saw it, the sadness in his eyes. He didn't ask again. He simply stood up and started washing the dishes. I sat there, and still holding my fork. I froze. That evening I wrote in my journal, "Mikkel wants to build a future, but I'm still trying to survive the present." Later, I walked into the bedroom. He was reading. He smiled at me. I smiled back, but inside I felt like I was fading again. And the idea of raising a child in a life shaped by silence and guilt. It felt like a deep and painful lie. That night, I packed a small bag. Just a few clothes, a book, and my journal. I folded each piece slowly, like every item was its own decision. Each zip on the bag sounded like a goodbye. Mikkel was asleep, peaceful, smiling slightly in his dreams, like someone who still believed in love, who had no idea what was about to break. I stood by the door, heart racing, and hand on the knob. It felt too heavy, like it already knew what I couldn't admit. I turned to look at him, still asleep, still calm, and that broke me. I slid down to the floor beside the door, the bag resting next to me, and I cried quietly. I didn't want to leave like this. I didn't want to hurt him. But staying was hurting me. The next morning, I woke up right there on the floor. The bag was still by my side. Mikkel made coffee, like always. He kissed me on the cheek and said, "Good morning, my love. I believe in us." I wanted to scream, "Please stop believing." But I stayed quiet. I looked at him, then at the bag, and I realized I hadn't left, but I wasn't really staying either. That evening, the light in the apartment was soft. Mikkel was on the couch with 2 cups of tea. When he saw me, he smiled and asked, "Sit with me." I nodded and sat beside him, but not too close. My hands were shaking. My heart felt loud in my chest. And this time, I didn't push the feeling away. I said, "I need to tell you something." Mikkel didn't interrupt. He just looked at me and waited. I took a deep breath. "Mikkel, I care about you. You are a good man, but I don't love you. I never did." He didn't move. His face was calm, but his eyes turned red. He spoke quietly. "I knew, Freja. I saw it in your eyes. I just didn't want to believe it." Tears filled mine. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I never wanted to hurt you." Mikkel looked down for a moment, then said something I'll never forget. "I love you, Freja. I really do. But I can't be the only one trying. If your heart isn't here, I won't hold you back." His words were soft, but they cut deep, because even as I broke his heart, he stayed kind. We sat together in silence. No yelling. No blame. Just quiet sadness. That night, I slept on the couch. I stared at the ceiling, and whispering to myself. I told the truth. I didn't know what would happen next, but something inside had finally shifted. I had stopped pretending. The apartment felt different, heavy and quiet, like even the walls knew it was ending. I moved into the guest room. Mikkel slept in our old bed. We didn't speak much, but there was no anger, only time and space. He still made coffee in the mornings. Still left a cup on the table. But the little notes were gone. No good morning. Only silence. One evening, I sat across from him. "I think I need to leave," I said. He didn't look surprised. "Do you have somewhere to go?" he asked. I nodded. "Yes, Eliza offered me her guest room." He looked down, then said, "I'm not angry. I'm just sad. But maybe this is the right thing." Tears burned in my eyes. "I never wanted to break your heart." Mikkel gave a soft, tired smile. "You didn't break it, Freja. I gave it to you, even if you couldn't keep it. I don't regret that." The next morning, I packed a small bag, some clothes, my journal, a photo of my mother. I didn't take much. The apartment felt full of memories, even if we only lived there for a year. Mikkel helped carry my bag to the door. He looked at me one last time and said, "Take care, Freja." I nodded. "I will. Thank you for everything." I walked out. I didn't look back. For the first time, I wasn't running away. I was walking toward something honest. Eliza's apartment was small, but safe. I stayed in the guest room. Every night, I cried a little, not because I missed Mikkel, but because I was finally feeling everything I'd buried. Guilt, fear, and something else, relief. The days passed slowly. Eliza never asked questions. She just made tea, played soft music, and sat with me when I needed company. I began taking long walks by the lake. I watched strangers laugh, hold hands, and sip coffee. I started to wonder, could I have a life like that? Not perfect. Just real. Then one day, I saw a flyer, Creative Writing Group. Wednesday, 7 p.m. I didn't know why, but something inside me whispered, "Go." The class had only 8 people. They were different in age, and each person had their own life story to share. We wrote. We read aloud. I was nervous at first, but little by little, I started finding my voice. In my journal, I wrote, "I lost love before I ever truly found it. But now, I'm finding myself." Weeks passed. I found a small studio apartment near the bookshop. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. I painted the walls a soft yellow, placed flowers near the window, made my own coffee every morning, and sat in silence, but now that silence felt peaceful. One day, I opened a drawer and found the heart-shaped necklace Mikkel had given me. I held it in my hand for a moment, then placed it in a small box with a note, "Thank you for your kindness. I couldn't wear this, but I'll never forget it." I asked Eliza to return it to him. She did. And that felt like the closing of a chapter, not erased, just finished. I still think of Mikkel sometimes. I hope he finds someone who loves him completely. Someone whose smile is true. As for me, I'm still learning, still healing, still growing, but now, I'm walking my own path. No pretending. No silence. I looked in the mirror the other day, and, for the first time in what felt like forever, I smiled. Not because I had to, but because I truly meant it. This isn't a perfect story. But it's mine. And maybe the most powerful love we can give ourselves is honesty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more real-life inspired tales, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to English Audio Club, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a story. Your support means the world, and I'll see you in the next one.